How much of an impact do physios and sports scientists actually have on injuries in FM24? This is a question I asked myself very recently whilst making some staff changes in one of my more injury-ravaged saves. And ultimately, it has led to this, the start of an FM experiment series where I hopefully get to the bottom of it. Now, I went into this with the idea that physios reduce the length of injuries while sports scientists reduce the amount of injuries in a given situation. But we are going to test just that, with the focus in this first part being primarily on physios. I will do this with 4 key questions in mind. And the first one is, do physios have any impact at all? Now, the Reddit forum seems to suggest that a lot of people think that they have absolutely no place in the game. They're just there as a frill or an embellishment to give you a little bit more to do. Now, if they do have an impact, the next question is, how many physios do you actually need? Is it simply a case of the more the better? The third question then is, does physio ability have any significant impact as well? One would imagine that if physios do have an impact on injuries, the number of physios and the ability of these physios really does play an important part. And so the last question is a comparison of the two. Should you focus more on the number of physios you have or the ability of these physios? To put it simply, will 2 really good physios outweigh 10 really poor ones? Logic would suggest that having 1 cook that really knows what they're doing as opposed to 10 that don't will likely provide a better final dish. Nonetheless, we are going to test it all out. We'll start off by looking at how I set up the sims and collected the data, then move on to how I analyze that data, and then get to the results and the implications of them. So to start off this experiment, I needed a test population. I chose Manchester United, a team that has been affected by injuries quite heavily in recent times. I then went ahead and removed all the existing physios and the head physio and replaced them with some artificial ones. In this case, named Good Boy 1, 2, 3 all the way to 10. Now for each save, I controlled either the number of physios that were at the club or the current ability of these physios, standardizing all of them to a certain ability level. I then went ahead and simulated 3 seasons, stopping at the end of each season the day before the game rolls over, documenting all the injuries as per the medical center. Now importantly, in the first season when starting off a save with Man United, Amad Diallo, Rasmus Højlund and Tyrell Malacia are all currently injured. So I excluded these injuries from any data. What I ended up with then are a bunch of data tables that look like this, documenting the number of injuries and the percentage time missed for each season, and then eventually tabulating that and getting an average of injuries per season and average time missed per season. After doing this a total of 12 times, we arrived at an overall data table that looks like this. So we ended up with 4 sims having good physios, 4 having medium physios, and 4 having bad physios. In total, we had 3 sims with 11 physios, 3 with 8, 3 with 5, and 3 with 2. And then I went on to documenting the total injuries over the course of the 3 seasons, the total percentage time missed over the course of 3 seasons, and then breaking that down into an average injury length in terms of percentage and then in terms of days. We also simply divided a few of these amounts to give us the injuries per season and the average percentage time missed per season. The next step then was checking the data for statistical validity. I won't bore you with the details, but quite simply what I did was I looked at the scatter plots, the correlations, and then after checking the assumptions, I performed a bunch of linear or multiple linear regressions to identify the effect of the independent variable on the outcome. And that saw us arrive at the results. And we'll kick things off by confirming an earlier assumption. And that is that physios have no impact on the total number of injuries in a season over the course of a number of seasons. What you can see on the screen now are 2 scatter plots, one for the total number of injuries over 3 seasons for differing numbers of physios, and the other for the total number of injuries over 3 seasons for differing physio ability. In both cases, there is no discernible correlation between the factor we were testing and the total number of injuries. What that means in simple terms is the data that we have could not identify any effect of the number of physios in the total number of injuries or the physio ability on the total number of injuries. As such, we are going to kick this one out the door. From this point forward, we will not focus on the number of injuries anymore. We'll look at the impact that physios have from the viewpoint of the duration of these injuries. And thankfully, that looks a lot better. So what you can see on screen now is the initial overall data table, just with a few things highlighted so you can pinpoint what I'm talking about. We're looking at the overall physio ability here for each save, the number of physios in each save, then the total percentage time missed over the 3 seasons, and the average injury length in days per injury. So when it comes to the total percentage time missed through injury, we start off with these two scatter plots first. As you can see very clearly, there is some sort of linear relationship occurring with both. I've popped in these trend lines so that you can see very clearly off the bat that as the number of physios increases in this case, the total time missed through injury seemingly decreases. Likewise, as the physio ability increases, the total time missed through injury also decreases. Now, if we move further down, we'll see that the same holds true for the average injury length in days. As the number of physios increased, the average injury length in days seemingly decreased. And likewise, as the physio ability increased, the average injury length in days also decreased. Now, in gross terms, these plots allow us to visualize the nature of the relationship between the factor being assessed and the outcome factor. But I wanted to find out exactly what the effect was. And to show you that, we have to look at the regression statistics. So this is a multiple linear regression where we looked at the effect of physioability and number of physios on the average percentage time missed through injury per season. Of course, that was simply dividing the total percentage missed time over the 3 seasons by 3 to arrive at an average per season. Now, there's a lot of information on screen, but to simplify, what this is telling us is that if we look at this number right here, and I'll go ahead and highlight it so you know what I'm talking about. What this coefficient tells us is that for every time we increase physioability by 1, the average percentage missed time through injury per season should go down by 0.275%. Likewise, if I highlight the next one, which is the number of physios, for every time we increase the number of physios by 1, the average percentage missed time through injury per season should go down by 2.9%. Now, the number above this, the intercept, 214.44, basically says that if we had no physios and no physioability, we would have an average percentage missed time through injury per season of 214.446. When plugging this entire thing into an equation, what this equation tells us is that every time we increase the physioability by 1, the average percentage missed time through injury per season will go down by 0.275%, and likewise, if you increase the physios by 1, it will go down by 2.9%. Now, looking at this in terms of average percentage time missed can make it a bit hard to appreciate. So I did another regression where I looked at the average length of time in days missed per injury. And here we're going to look at the same thing. So if we click on this and then highlight it, points out what I'm talking about, you can see that as the physioability increases by 1, the average injury length will decrease by 0.016 days. Now, to make this a bit more simple, if we increased our physioability by 100, we would get about a day less of injury time on average per injury. Likewise, if we look at the number of physios, and I just click this to yellow now, for every time we increase our number of physios by 1, our average time for an injury should go down by 0.22 days. So for every 5 physios that we add to the mix, we should go ahead and bring down our average injury length time by about a day. So what we can say from all of this then is that both things definitely have an impact. Increasing the number of physios will reduce the amount of time that your players spend out injured, and likewise, increasing your physio ability will also do the same. Now, we'll expand on this a little bit more with some context, but before that, because these two things seem to have a relationship, I looked at finding an alternative for why this could happen by combining the two factors. And what I did simply then is looked at this little tab called physio factor. So the physio factor quite simply is the number of physios multiplied by the physioability. Like in this case, 400 is 2 times 200. Likewise, the 11 physios here with the ability of 10 each gives us 110. I use this to try and further examine that comparative aspect of the fourth question. Is it better to have 10 very poor physios or just a couple that are very good? From the initial data collected, you could say that in this case where we had just 2 very good physios, we had an average injury length of 11.71 versus the 11 physios in this case, which resulted in a longer average injury length of 12.78. Now, on face value, whilst that does hold true, the physio factor shows us that there is actually a difference between the two. These 2 physios ended up with a physio factor of 400 versus these 11 physios who have a physio factor of just 110. And we'll look further into this. If we look at the scatter plots down here, we can see off the bat that the physio factor, the thing that I just created, seemingly has an effect on both the total percentage of time missed through injury and the average injury length. In this case, as the physio factor increases, the total percentage time missed through injury seemingly decreases, and likewise here, as the physio factor increases, the average injury length in days decreases. If we come down to the regression that I did yet again, we can see exactly what physio factor seemingly has done to our average percentage time missed per season. In this case, every time the physio factor went up by 1, the average percentage time missed per season through injury went down by 0.033. This is a bit hard to understand if we're not looking at the days yet again. So again, what I did is I did it for the days, and as you can see here, every time the physio factor goes up by 1, the average length of an injury decreases by 0.002 days. Now that is a minute amount, but when considering that the physio factor is a multiplication of a physio by their ability, having many physios with high abilities will see this go down very fast. And that can let us ultimately answer our question: what is actually more important? When we look at the number of physios, remember that in context, this can only go up in increments of 1. You can employ 1 more physio or 2 more physios or 3 more, etc., etc. Versus physio ability, which can go up in potentially larger increments. Remember, current ability ranges from 0 to 200. So there is the potential that you can increase the physio ability by 150 or more. Let's look at a quick example to help put this into perspective. So let's say we had 4 physios with a physio ability of 50. We would end up with a physio factor of 200. Now you want to improve, you want to bring in new staff and potentially make a difference to your injuries. You then go ahead and say we have 4 physios, and we'll go ahead and we'll add 2 more that are similar in level, another 2 of ability of 50, and you end up with a physio factor of 300. Now remember, you've brought in 2 new physios, you're paying wages for 2 more people. You could potentially get rid of all 4 physios and bring in slightly better physios that has an even better impact. Let's say that we now have 0 physios because we've terminated the contracts of all 4, and we bring in 4 new physios, all with an ability of 80. But simply, this is going to be better than the 6 physios all rated at 50. So in the grand scheme of things, what you really need to think about in terms of the implications of these results is that it is case dependent. If you have the room in your staff to employ a number of physios, you could go ahead and bring a few more in. At the very least, even at the lower levels with some very poor ability physios, it will give you some boost to reducing your injuries. If you don't have the room to bring in many more physios, it might actually be a better idea to get rid of some of them that are currently at the club by terminating their contracts or waiting until they expire and then bringing in quality instead of quantity. Now to drive home the concept, let's use a simple calculation one more time. So this little equation here is derived from the data and this regression to tell us what will the average length of an injury be for a particular physio factor. Now, if we took the original physio factor of 200, plugged it in here, we'll see that this 13.465 goes down to 13.065. We haven't even lost a half a day. Instead, let's look at what would happen if we brought in 5 physios, all with an ability of 160. This number would, of course, go up to 800, which is 5 times 160. And now look at your average length of an injury, 11.865. That has gone down by more than 1.5 days this time. So quite simply, what this should tell you is that whilst the number of physios and the physio ability definitely does impact your injuries, there isn't really much point in making a change unless it's going to be a significant one. Bringing in 1 more physio with very low quality isn't going to do much, but bringing in significant quality in significant numbers is likely to bring down the amount of time your players spend injured. Now to reiterate what I said earlier, the number of physios goes up in increments of 1, whilst ability has the potential to go up by a lot more. So it might be best that you focus on physio ability rather than the number of physios. So to answer our 4 questions then, do physios have an impact on injuries? The data seems to suggest that they definitely do. Is the number of physios important? Yes, it is, but as we saw earlier, that it takes a lot more increasing your number of physios than it does with current ability. And that answers question 3. Does the ability of a physio have a significant impact? And the data seems to suggest that it possibly has the greatest impact. And that partially answers question number 4. With physio ability seemingly having a greater impact than the number of physios, the only time when many poor physios will give you the same value as a few good ones is when the physio factors seem to line up. So if you had 2 excellent physios both with 200 ratings, you're going to need 40 that have abilities of 10. If you find some middle ground and get some medium physios that are rated about 100, you could get away with 4 versus the 2 excellent ones. Now I hope that this has answered some of the questions you have, just like it has answered some of the questions that I had. And whilst I spent a lot of time delving into the stats here, I am by no means someone of a stats or data analytics background. If you found some flaws in what has been done here, please pop them in the comments and I will definitely take them on board as we go further in the series. Now that we have some understanding of what the physio's impact is, the next episode will look at the sports scientist in isolation. We'll go through it in similar fashion and then try to assess the difference between the two. Who's worth more, the physio or the sports scientist? In a comparison of some sort, we'll try to ascertain exactly that. Now, if you didn't find this a complete waste of your time or you enjoyed it, please drop me a like and hit the subscribe button. Plus, hit the notification bell so you'll stay up to date when the future episodes of this series comes out. You can also check out some of the other FM content on the channel, like some challenges and my Sunday League to Legends save. But until the next one, please take care and laka check you bye.